Welcome back to another episode of Grandstand podcast, but this is much more different. This is probably the first time we are ever doing, not probably, but the first time we are ever doing such a thing. And just before we start, we are not promoting it. We are not a part of any organization, even though we would love to be even sponsored by it.
Sounds like a terrorism episode.
Sounds like a cult.
It's all we're doing drugs.
Some kind of like some underworld cult. Anyway, but it's about betting, and we're going to talk about how you can make bets based on analysis,
betting,
and we're going
not-
to trying to smooth betting, and we're trying to give you the best. The way this works is we give you analysis, and we tell you what the odds are for the particular betting company, and you take a calculated, thought-provoked decision on it. We are not liable for any loss. We are not liable for any gain that you make. We are not liable for any money that goes out of your pocket or comes into it.
But
There's
just when you
a-
become a
that's a
billionaire,
liability
just
clause.
tag and say,
Yeah.
thank you, Grandstand, for making my life,
Of
really
course,
today.
Yeah, you can definitely refer us to your friends. But
100%.
we're going to be starting off with the Ashes, the second test of the Ashes. The first test was won by Australia, quite in a very dramatic manner. It was known as Common Sense versus Bazball, and we're going to be talking about all of that in the
wow.
next. Yeah, I know that was said.
Common Sense versus Bazball. That's very interesting.
Actually, it was the Iceland cricket Twitter account.
No, that guy's on
Yeah.
something else. I mean, that guy or girl,
Okay.
he's on something else. He's on some.
But
He's a legend.
But we're going to be talking about the second test of the Ashes. The second test starts on Wednesday. We're recording this on Monday, and yeah, based on all our calculated analysis, you can make a calculated decision. So there's one thing that we need to note, and that is that the squad for England has changed. Moeen Ali coming out due to an injury, and Rishan Ahmed coming in, an 18-year-old who actually made the news first in a test in Pakistan, where he picked up a 5-wicket haul. So great stuff for him, and he's going to be in the squad this time around, and it's going to be starting on Wednesday. Australia have made no changes, so that's confirmed. But they'll be looking to make it a bit more smoother than last time out. And to talk about the betting and the analysis to a greater extent, I'm going to pass the torch on to Shavin and Abhishek.
Yeah. So just to give you guys a little background on this, this episode and this series is sort of inspired by a podcast that I listen to called No Bets Barred by MMA Fighting, which it's not purely about the betting aspect of it. It's also like an interesting way to analyze the sports you watch and sort of look at the sports in a different way rather than just looking at, if you're looking at the Ashes, like will England win or will Australia win. There's so many other things regarding player performance that you can look at. So it's just a different. I don't think this has been done by any Sri Lankan sports podcast before, this sort of episode. So we just want to bring something new and see what kind of response we get. So so we'll start off with the first bet. Obviously, the first one is a draw no bet, which is regarding the match results. So essentially, we are picking between England and Australia, but the way Bet365 offers this is if the match is a draw, which is a high possibility given that it's a test match, you will in fact get your money back and you won't make any losses. But if you predict England or Australia correctly, you will obviously get a return. So Abhishek, why don't you take it away with regards
Yes, I mean,
to the result?
just before we start that, I think talk on that. We can. I think you can tell the audience where Sri Lankans can look for betting odds and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
So we're looking at
absolutely.
Bet365, which is an English company.
Yes.
But
Yeah, so we are using Bet365, but in Sri Lanka, you can use Sporting Times. I'm not entirely sure if you can use Bet365 in Sri Lanka, but if you're watching from anywhere else around the world, if you're watching from the UK or from a European country, you can definitely use Bet365. If not, you can just log into Sporting Times online, and they'll offer the odds will be very similar. And you can use that. So yeah, Abhishek, why don't you take it away?
yeah, so the first bet, which is a draw no bet, as Shavin explained.
Yeah.
So the odds right now, 3 days before the test, are as follows. So if England win, for an England win rather, if you bet £1, you will have a return of £2 and 10 cents. And if Australia win and you bet £1, you have a return of £1 and 72 cents. So what that means is they're expecting more of an Australia win for the second test.
Yeah.
That's why you have much lesser, gains, if you'd like to say, for an Australian win. But I think, me personally, again, like we said, it's just our advice, our analysis. It's up to you to take it and use it as you will. I think this is a bet where you can actually put some money and on an England win and probably earn some cash. And the reason why I say it, there are multiple reasons. First of all, Bazball, like Kainka said, it is something that has brought England a lot of success in recent times. Brendan McCallum came into the side, and when he came in, the side was, very conservative under Joe Root and Chris Silverwood, and they were not going anywhere. And he brings in this child, which he used as a captain for New Zealand, and he had success with it as well. And he has a captain who definitely replicates his style of playing, Ben Stokes. And they've had some really good success. They had a whitewash in in Pakistan. And then they had a 1-1 draw in New Zealand, where New Zealand has been unbeatable at home. And they've had some good results. And this team is known for comebacks, after a first test disappointment, for them to come back and, win tests. Added to that, you have the conditions at Lords, which will suit bowlers like James Anderson-Moore. He was not very effective in the first test, and they have batsmen who are in form. The next thing is, the first test was a brilliant test, but it was by no means a test where Australia were ahead at any point. It was very 50-50. It was a brilliant match against two sides, but Australia won, but it was not as if they were far ahead. It was a few brilliant performances from Usman Khawaja, Pat Cummins, Nathan Lyon at the end. So due to that, the teams are very much well matched. And I think at Lords, given the fact that they need a win, I think England will come out all guns blazing as they were expected to. And I think they can win that test. So I would have no qualms in putting some money on an England win. And I think it's very, very likely that we will have an England win at Lords.
Yeah, and just for anyone who's unfamiliar with this, the way this works is these odds will obviously change up during the course of the test, and it can even change with a wicket. Like if you guys are watching like the last test, like when Travis Head got out, the odds for Australia increased. When Khawaja got out, the odds increased again. And the odds are actually on England in that test. Like people are favoring England in that test, and then it just kept shifting, and it was a really dramatic test. But it will change. So we're obviously giving our picks for day one and how it'll play out that way. So yeah. So next, moving on from the match result to sort of individual players. So Bet365 offers a player performance metric, which is essentially they offer 1 point for every run the player scores, 20 points per wicket, and 25 points per stumping, and 10 points per catch. And essentially, what you're betting on is if certain players will get above 100 points. So, for instance, if it was like Ben Stokes, who is an all-rounder, he has a much higher chance of reaching 100 points because he can bat and bowl and field very well as well. So, if you want to know how the Bet365 system works, you can probably just Google it, type it out, or else we can link it in the caption as well.
Or you can just use ChatGPT.
Yeah, or you can use ChatGPT.
Yeah, 2023. Just like ask it, man.
Yeah, they'll probably tell you how it works.
That's how I learned.
Yeah, for sure. So, Abhishek, who are your picks in terms of the over for?
Yeah, I think good point. You were talking about the over, but you can also pick the under. I mean, who's out of form. Probably, I mean, no disrespect. I mean, he's a brilliant player, but David Warner struggles a lot in England. Maybe you can put some money on him.
That's interesting, yes.
No, it is, but it depends. I mean, it depends on the player and, how they perform that day. But for player performance, I'll just go through the odds. I had to find it. Just give me a second. And so important point to make. Obviously, all-rounders will probably have a higher chance of scoring over 100 runs. So in this case, Ben Stokes for sure and Cameron Green. Unfortunately, Moeen Ali is injured, so he won't be there, as Kanka explained at the start. But because, Cameron Green and Ben Stokes, they are reliable with the ball. Problem is Ben Stokes probably doesn't bowl as much as he should. Cameron Green does. And they can also score runs. And they take great catches. They're brilliant fielders, the two of them. So maybe you can put money on them to get over 100 points according to the Bet 365 point system. Those two players are two players you can watch. In addition, players to watch out for, I think, certainly Joe Root, because Joe Root is right now the number one test batsman and he's on fire as a batsman the way he's playing until now. Tomorrow, the next test he gets up to 0. But but seriously, he's been in tremendous form, so that's someone you can easily put your money on. Steve Smith, who has been the best test batsman for a long period of time, and he had his struggles in the first test, but I feel like he's due for a big score. Probably you can say the same about Marnus Labuschagne, but I would trend more towards Steve Smith. If I look other batsmen, probably Usman Khawaja, who's really batting superbly at this point. And I don't see why you shouldn't put your money on in his hat. An interesting player I would say is Harry Brook, because Harry Brook has epitomized this whole transformation of England. With his batting, he's the physical representation of Bazball, because he's come in, and if you look at his strike rate is 98, which is crazy high in Test cricket. Okay, yeah. And he averages in the 70s. He comes and takes the attack to the opposition bowlers. He got very unlucky in the first Test. I mean, his dismissal was a freak dismissal. It rarely happens. Okay, yeah. So this guy, I think, will score some runs. I feel. That's it with the batsmen. There's probably a few I missed, but these are the few that come to mind. From the bowlers, I think James Anderson is in for a good test. He struggled in the first test with no assistance from the pitch or from the conditions, but Lords is a bit more favourable to his style of bowling with a lot of swing. He's also nearing the record of 700 test wickets, so I think this test could be good for him. Nathan Lyon is very consistent. You can put your money on him. Pat Cummins also probably. So those are my picks. Mainly, I would say Joe Root for sure, Usman Khawaja, maybe Harry Brook. You can expect something from him. And from the bowlers, James Anderson and Nathan Lyon for sure.
Right. So
I feel it's kind of rude that I left out Stuart Broad but Stuart Broad has been consistent right throughout. I mean, he's bowling superbly. But just for this test, I would say James Anderson and Nathan Lyon from the bowlers. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to, expand on this. And we have the best batter, best bowler pick, which is obviously self-explanatory. Who gets the most wickets and who scores the most runs. Who do you think is a good value pick for best batter, best bowler? And who would you put your money on?
I mean, seeing that I'm going along this England win I don't know why. It's just I feel like they need to come back. They need to win this test for sure. Okay, because if they play another test, a draw would be not too bad, but another loss playing like this would be a serious problem for sure. I think the pressure is on England, and I think they should, step up to the plate. But because I'm going down the England route, I think Joe Root, just because he scored a brilliant 100 in the first test. Only guy I can see who could beat him would be Usman Khawaja based on his batting performance. But Root's at home, and the way he's batting, it should be him. And I'm really banking on James Anderson because just the experience and the way, he's always managed to fight back. And also on the fact that, he's closing in on 700 test wickets. No one would have probably expected a fast bowler to reach 700.
Yeah.
So those are my two picks. But I'm less convinced on the James Anderson one because you never know. Maybe Pat Cummins or Nathan Lyon. Pat Cummins, is a brilliant bowler as well. He was the world number one for so long. He could pick up wickets. There could be someone else. You never know. It's not. Nothing is written in stone. But it's just based on history, given the fact that swing is a massive factor at Lords, and James Anderson has gone really well at Lords as well. So those are the reasons why I would pick Joe Root and James Anderson. So best batsman, obviously Joe Root. Best bowler, James Anderson. But like I said, watch out. I feel Harry Brook is in for a big one. I feel it because the way he's been batting. Usman Khawaja as well. We've given you quite a few options so that you won't feel like you've been cheated out of getting good money. But my two picks, like final picks, would be Joe Root and James Anderson.
Okay, fair enough. I think if you want to put like a hedge on Harry Brook, I think it's 12-1 odds for him to be the best batsman. So you
Yeah,
can
it
like
is.
maybe throw like a pound on him, or like if whatever in Sri Lanka, if you want
Maybe
to
you
throw
can
like
put some money on a more
$500 on
safer
him.
bet
Yeah.
like Joe Root, like for sure, just to make sure that you will get some money. And then if you are feeling a bit crazy, you can
Yeah.
probably put some money on Harry Brook. No, but seriously, he's a guy who could really be big for England. He's really good.
Yeah. So those are picks for best batter and best bowler. Now we have sort of two more interesting bets. We'll start off with I think the batter matches. This is essentially once again very interesting bet. It's Bet365 sort of pits two batsmen against each other, and you pick which batsman will
Score higher.
score more runs in the match. So there's a few matchups. Abhishek will take you through sort of the interesting ones.
Yeah, well, there are a few interesting ones, but
Yeah.
I suggest you don't go for those because
Yeah.
you don't know. Okay, so for example, that's Steve Smith versus Joe Root. I know I'm going for along the Joe Root line, but Steve Smith has. You remember the last time he played at Lords, he got copped on the head by Geoffrey Arch and still scored 92. Got copped on the elbow and still he scored more than the rest of the entire Australian team like together. I think, if I'm not mistaken. So bets are that it's safer to avoid, like Joe Root versus Smith. There's also Smith versus Labuschagne. Labuschagne was the number one test batsman before Joe Root, so he could come into form as well. He's been struggling a bit, even though he's had a bit of struggles outside Australia. He could come into form. He's a class batsman as well. So avoid those, I would say. But I would say right now, again, no disrespect, a brilliant batsman. As he'll go down as one of the best in history. But in England, he's struggling a lot, and that's David Warner. He could turn it around, I'm just saying. But history shows that probably, so I'm just going to give you the matchup. It's Khawaja versus Warner. So right now, just based on current form and the way that Stuart Broad is managing to get David Warner out every single time, you can go for that, for Khawaja outscoring David Warner. That's one. Another one you could go for is Joe Root and Ollie Pope, because the odds, they match them up as well. Ollie Pope is a good batsman. He's a decent, solid batsman, but currently we're struggling a bit for runs, maybe. And Joe Root is not. Joe Root is batting really well. So those are two lineups which I think you can safely bet your money on and get some, return on your investment. That's a common term, I guess. I don't know.
Yes.
Those are the two matches that I would say. But if you are feeling a bit crazy again, you can probably go for Root versus Smith and go on your instincts. If I took that, I would probably go with a Root, like I've been saying. If it was Smith Labuschagne, I would probably go for a Smith just because he has more experience. So it's a very I find this really, really interesting, this particular one, because you could go a bit crazy, get lucky, and get some good cash in your pocket. But David Warner versus Khawaja, Smith versus what did I say? Pope versus Root. I go for Root. That's it.
So right now Khawaja is at 8/13 odds, so that roughly translates to if you bet a pound, you will win 1.6 pounds, or if you bet 10 pounds, you'll win 16. So there is one last bet which I sort of looked at. I thought it was quite interesting, which is actually batter matched runs. So the way this works is you sort of bet, once again, it's an over under, and you bet in the entire match if a certain batter will get above a certain amount of runs or below a certain amount of runs. So there's only 4 options available. You have Joe Root, Ollie Pope, Labuschagne, and Smith. So for Joe Root to score 87.5 runs in this match, if Joe Root scores over 87 runs combined in both innings, the odds are 5-6. So basically, that would pay out at 83%. So essentially, if you think Joe Root will score more than 87 runs in this match combined, and you put in 10 pounds, it pays you out around about 18.5 pounds. So this, I think, once again, it is. I mean, nothing is safe. It is sports betting at the end of the day, but it's sort of a safe bet, I think. At 87, I mean, it's very likely that Root will score more than 87 runs combined. So just another option to sort of look at, and this sort of, I don't know, mirrors this like MMA bets that you take in the over under as well. Maybe that's why I'm more inclined towards this.
Maybe.
But yeah, I think that concludes our list of picks, and
I think it's very interesting because I think if you're getting into betting, I think you need to figure out which are the safer bets, and that's where you put a lot of your money.
For
And
sure.
then if you want to go a bit crazy, you could find, because there are a few bets like, which I find a bit, it's just purely luck. Like, for example,
The toss.
yeah, the toss, like there's no influence whatsoever, on your performance, like how you performed in the last test doesn't influence the toss. Or like, there's like the first ball being a dot. You never know.
Yeah.
Like those things are just pure luck. So I think it's important just to identify which of these bets you can actually decide based on statistics. And I think that's how they do it as well. They come up with the odds based on that. But I think it's an interesting, topic that we've chosen here.
And we will hopefully do this on more sports and on football as well once the Premier League season starts. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess...
He's going to.
Anyway, that concludes the end of the episode. Of course, like Shavin and Abhishek said, do place your bets much more strategically, and we are not going for any bets that are out of bounds. Something like who wins the toss or first ball dot. We're going for bets that are, I would say, known all round and has been tried and tested. So that's the analysis that we are giving right now. Stay tuned. We'll see how the popularity of the show goes on over time. Based on it, we'll try to put out more content or even stop the whole thing.
Stop the whole podcast
if it isn't successful, if it isn't appealing. If it is. Yeah. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you. Bet safe, celebrate responsibly, and
also
take care.
a small donation to Grandstand would
Of course.